And thank you once again for joining us here on PM Express. My guest tonight is Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, and he is the Deputy Energy Minister responsible for petroleum. You knew him in his previous life as the man who headed the Africa Center for Energy Policy. Currently, he is gunning to be a member of parliament for Karaga, and so he's also been very busy on the ground campaigning. You don't know, but this is not his first attempt at politics in terms of, campaigning. He's done this before, but I guess he believes this is the best opportunity yet over the last many times that he's attempted. Doc, thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express.
Thank you, Evans, and thanks for the opportunity.
So you have 5 months to go to the elections. Are you feeling anxious yet?
Of course. Of course, in every competition, however confident you may be, you will feel anxious somehow, because the verdict is out there, and especially for constituencies that are not clear-cut, what we call strongholds. You certainly will feel anxious.
Your constituency is a stronghold of the...
It's not. The NDC has won the seat since the constituency was created, yes.
Yeah. So is that your anxiety, that you might become part of the casualty list as the history shows?
Well, I think there will be a difference, this time. I have studied the constituency, I've studied the needs of the people, and also I've adopted strategies that I think will prevail over those of my opponents.
Tell me something. Now you're a politician. Yeah. In fact, you've been a politician for a while, because the first time I met you, you were the MC for Tamale. This is decades ago. Politicians always give us the impression that they don't feel anxiety when the polls are getting close. Because when you hear them speak, they are 100% sure they are going to win. Honestly, approaching elections, do you sometimes wake up in cold sweat wondering, oh my goodness, what if I lose this?
Well, as I said, there are constituencies that are considered, strongholds. And so what you need is to win your primaries. And once you win your primaries, the main election is a given. There are others that are not clear-cut. It's a 50-50 chance, And so for those constituencies, certainly you may have confidence. You've delivered your message, you've lobbied for projects, to the constituency, but you are still not sure whether the people are going to accept your message, whether what you have done, has met the aspirations of the people, and therefore they will give their verdict in your favor. And so certainly, yes, you will be anxious, and I have been anxious, because I entered this race as the underdog, facing an incumbent that has held the seat for 2 consecutive terms, and also contesting in a constituency that the MPP has not won before, since the constituency was created. And so I entered as the underdog, and that informed my strategy, aggressive strategy. And so you are doing many things some people may consider speedy. Others have said that you may even peak ahead of the peak period, because you want to run when your opponent is walking, because your opponent is ahead of you. And so I have done so many extraordinary things. Government has also done so many development projects in the constituency, just like in many other constituencies. And I'm very confident that we will deliver the constituency.
Doc, the oil and gas, COVID-19 has put his icy hand on it. It's globally, the industry is struggling. Ghana, some of the players, huge players, exploration, production companies have either postponed their projects. Some of them are laying off staff. Some of them that, whether they will fold up, nobody knows. The finance minister was in parliament recently and gave a shocking assessment of what this is going to mean for us revenue-wise, because it's going to take a huge cut in the revenue expectations. This must be giving you some sleepless nights, because this is your responsibility as a deputy minister.
Yeah. Well, I think that every government of an oil-producing country is worried. I mean, because the effects are so visible. Demand has gone down, prices have fallen drastically, people are losing jobs. And so, yes, you develop an industry to be able to get more money, to be able to provide more jobs. And so where you have a reverse, in that industry, you certainly should be worried. But I like to remind you that if before COVID, the oil and gas industry was already in danger because Saudi Arabia and Russia failed to reach an agreement over supply levels. And this led to the market flooded with so much oil relative to demand, and that sent prices crashing. And this happened before COVID. However, COVID came and compounded the problem. Because of the lockdowns and the restrictions imposed by governments, demand has suffered significantly, far more than we anticipated. And this is why prices went down further. And so, yes, we had a challenge, but COVID has added to the challenge. But it is not only prices that have suffered as a result of the lower demand. As you rightly said, a number of companies have suspended their projects. They are delaying projects. Others have canceled projects. In Ghana here, Aker Energy has suspended its project, the development of the field, of the Aker field. Tullow Oil has decided not to renew its oil rig contract. Elsewhere in Mozambique, ENI has delayed its project. I mean, globally, companies are delaying or canceling projects. But there's a positive side to this.
Which is?
Because as they delay projects and cancel projects, in the medium term, you are going to see supply going down, provided that demand picks up. And we are seeing demand picking up because countries are opening up, they are lifting restrictions, and so demand is going to pick up. And that means that prices will also go up. That's the positive side of it. This is not going to be immediate, but it will happen as the industry recovers. But it is also important to state that when projects are delayed or cancelled, capital is reprioritized. And so the capital that was to go into the development of these projects may find their way elsewhere in other industries. And this is adding up to a challenge the oil and gas industry has already been facing, financing of projects. Because of climate change and other considerations, funding for oil and gas projects are moving to low carbon projects. They are moving away from fossil fuel projects. And so delaying projects and cancelling projects may find the capital, financiers reprioritizing their funding elsewhere. And that may affect the future of the oil and gas industry. And this is why most people have said that we will never return to the period before COVID. And that can be justified to the extent that capital has been reprioritized away from the oil and gas projects to other projects. Another effect, which I think is yet to be evaluated, is how many peoples the virus would have eliminated. Critical manpower working in the oil and gas industry that would have lost their lives to the virus. This is yet to be evaluated, but it's very important because it takes a longer time to train somebody to work in the oil and gas industry. It's basically a skilled industry, and if you have to train people, with such longer periods to replace those who would have, lost their lives to experienced, skilled people who would have lost their lives to the virus, that also signals that the growth of the industry is going to be challenged. And so, yes, COVID has some effects. Now, our response, as a country, similar to what other countries around the world, because there is competition between countries. For example, our first priority is the safety of the people working for the oil companies, and also the safety of the people in communities where oil activity is taking place. And so we have worked with the oil companies in Ghana to prioritize their safety protocols, to uphold their safety standards, and ensure that their people are safe, their workers are safe. And that is what we've been doing with them for some time now, since COVID started.
So that
when the industry...
What about the companies that they need help themselves so that they can keep working, we can keep producing, keep exploring?
Yes.
Is government considering that?
Yes, Talo, for example, the Jubilee partners, applied to us that they did not want to end their drilling, even though they will not renew the drilling contract when this current campaign ends. They applied to us, they needed to bring in some more people to complete the work. We supported them, even though we had a lockdown. His Excellency the President gave them that special dispensation. They were able to continue their work, observing the physical distancing and also using face masks. So we have supported those companies that have asked for help.
Yes. And reliefs generally.
Yes, and that is my second point. That is the second point. In our response, we're also looking at, of course, some fiscal tools. Not in the area of royalty or corporate taxes, etc., but on the cost side. How do we ensure that their work becomes competitive on the cost side? And so we're looking at cost uplifts, for example, tax credits, for example, so that we can be able to support them on the fiscal side to be able to stay competitive.
This is across the board for them?
Yes, okay. But we are looking at that. We haven't given that dispensation yet. But what I'd like to say is this. Our fiscal regime is quite robust, and it somehow addresses some of these challenges because it has progressive elements in it, what we call additional oil entitlement. And so if you make profit, you are taxed. If you make supernormal profit, we apply the additional oil entitlement, which kicks in when you achieve a rate of return beyond a certain threshold. On the other hand, our fiscal regime also allows companies that are making losses to carry over their losses. So you can carry your losses for 5 years or for 10 years in the case of the ExxonMobil contract. And so we have that already. Let me also say that Ghana is a very competitive environment. An environment where our break-even price for Jubilee is around $12, a price at $35 per barrel today. I'm talking about Brent price. It shows that Ghana is competitive. The Sankofa is about $20. We are a competitive environment. And so the effect in terms of the cost of delivering oil and gas projects in Ghana will be minimal. There is a proposal that we introduce what we call a sliding scale system of fiscal terms. A sliding scale adjusted to prices will mean that when prices are lower, your royalty will be lower to incentivize investment. Because prices being lower, it means that the profit levels are not going to be high, and therefore an investor that will want to come in will have to be sure that the rent you are going to collect is not going to be so much. On the other hand, when prices are increasing, then your royalty is very high, to suggest that profitability is going to increase, and so you must be able to capture as much of the rent as possible. That's a sliding scale system. Because we are now too exposed to extreme price volatility, that is why there is that proposal that we consider introducing a sliding scale. But this is a proposal we are discussing. We are discussing that at the level of the ministry.
Is it favorable? Are you getting a favorable response?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah. It makes sense. Other countries have that. Kenya has that, Uganda, some of the new oil provinces of the world, they have sliding scale systems.
But that will benefit the companies?
It will benefit the country also. Because
for the country, how exactly?
Because in the case of a lower price, an oil company will not invest. When the oil company knows that they will make profit. No investor comes in to invest without expecting, positive returns. And so you want to tell them that even though we know that prices are lower, profitability is going to be lower.
You pay a corresponding?
Yes, corresponding. But where prices are lower, and then your royalty is very high, they may not even make the profit, but they will have to pay the royalty before they even consider their cost. Because royalty doesn't affect the cost. And so you want to incentivize investment, and that is one of the options you may want to look at. Another response we are looking at is extension of exploration periods for companies that are doing exploration in return for accelerated work program when COVID goes, and work resumes. So these are the
so they can make up for the time loss.
Yeah, they can make up for the time loss. These are the responses we are looking at.
Considering the hole that this is going to leave in our budget, as the finance minister told us in Parliament, are we over-relying on oil and gas as a revenue source as a country?
I mean, I should say that our economy is highly diversified. And so we cannot call Ghana an oil-dependent country because oil revenue is just about, I think, 1.2% of GDP. That and 11 or 12% of total revenue. And so we are not an oil-dependent nation. We are very diversified, and therefore, to the extent that other sources will bring in the revenue, we should be good.
With prices of crude on the world market this low, why aren't we seeing it at the pumps? We should be enjoying significant reductions at the pump. We are having. I bought fuel recently, and I haven't really seen the difference.
I think we have seen significant reduction.
Like, what is significant for you?
You have seen reduction.
Like a 50% reduction. No, because the oil price collapsed at the point it even costs more to store the oil than to actually produce it.
You see, I think we've seen a reduction from about 5 cedis, 5 pesos per liter to somewhere 4. Some are still quoting 3.8, 3.9. I mean, I checked Zen Petroleum's prices yesterday. They are under 4.
And so no. This is a historic low in prices in the world market.
We should understand that we didn't get here by chance. Several other factors have led to prices staying where they are. Number one, inflation has been one. Not just inflation here, but also imported inflation, because we are largely importing, most of the products that we consume, and also the exchange rate, the management of the exchange rate, The management of the exchange rate is being volatile. We have had to control it at some point. Other times it gets out of hand, and you'll have to bring it back. And so that historical management of the exchange rate is what has also brought the levels of prices to where we are today. And so, yes, if you were going to base it on just crude oil prices, then 1 peso reduction from 5 to 4 or under 4, I think it's quite decent. But let me even add that crude oil prices is not a direct determinant of our local prices.
What is?
It is international prices of refined products. Refined products.
But that's where the value addition happens.
Yes, that's where the value addition happens. And so crude prices may have fallen, but cost of refinery may not fall.
That brings up the question about toll.
Yes.
But toll is not, what is the status of toll? Because if we're doing it ourselves, and remember you had promised us that you're going to build another refinery in the Western region. Remember, it is in your manifesto.
Yes.
It begs that question, because if we're doing it ourselves, definitely to be cheaper than when we're doing it, we're relying on other countries.
Of course, when your refinery is efficient, yes, because refinery margins are very low. And so there are 2 factors that would make a refinery survive. Number 1 is efficiency. Number 2 is the scale, economies of scale. Okay, and so our economy is not that much. We're doing about 100,000 barrels a day. I mean, that is not large enough for economies of scale reasons. And so profitability is going to be challenged. And also the efficiency. TOR hasn't seen retooling in a long time. Until recently, when some of the equipment that broke down have been fixed. They are doing some refinery, but not up to capacity, Relating to our promise to do a refinery in the Western region, the government rather decided to take a more strategic view, because the oil and gas industry is losing value. climate change, competition with renewable energy, electric cars are coming out, we decided to have a strategic long-term view to develop a petroleum hub, a petrochemical hub in the Western region, which will not just have one refinery, but many refineries, oil refineries, as well as other petrochemical plants.
I wonder what the update is on that plan, because we've been hearing this since 2017. Where are we with that?
Yes. There are two things that we are about concluding. Number one is the acquisition of land. About 20,000 acres of land is being acquired in the Jomoro area. And then the second one is the agency that is going to shepherd the development of the hub, the Ghana Petroleum Hub Development Corporation. Cabinet has recently approved for the establishment of that corporation. And therefore, we are going to Parliament with the law, the bill that will establish it. And once the land is acquired and this agency is in place, you should see activity on the site.
I'm going to take another break. When we return, two important things we'll talk about. I mean, where are we with empowering our own people to control the oil and gas industry? I'm talking about local content capacity building. It's such a big area and concern for people who maybe say that a lot of our oil and gas multinationals aren't respecting the local content injunctions as you're supposed to. We'll ask the minister his thoughts on that. But about what is also the status on getting a replacement for PDS? Stay with us. Live on PM Express, my guest is Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, who is the Deputy Energy Minister responsible for petroleum. Doc, there's a concern by many that, well, we've done how many years since 2010 when we started producing oil? 2020 now, 10 years.
10 years, yes.
10 years. We haven't done well enough in the local content conversation in terms of getting Ghanaians in charge and running the industry. What's your own assessment of this? I mean, are you happy where we are?
Well, let's look at the data. And so if you talk about companies that are registered, recent data from 2017 to date, you have about 776 companies registered with the Petroleum Commission to work in the oil and gas industry. And of this, you have about 176 out of the 937 that are local firms, indigenous Ghanaian firms. So 937 total firms registered, 776 are indigenous firms. And so there is a rise in the number of Ghanaian companies or indigenous companies that have registered to work in the industry. But you and I know that most of these companies have not done work in the industry before. And this industry is about track record, and so you have to support them with the capacity to be able to work in the industry, to become competitive in the industry. In terms of labor, the number of people employed, in 2019 alone, about 5,200 Ghanaians were recruited. But this was largely because of the number and scale of drilling works that took place in 2019. Springfield, ENI, Block 4, Aker Energy, AGM, and of this, about 3,000 are from non-technical areas. 3,000 of the 5,000 are from non-technical areas. The non-technical areas do not offer many placement opportunities. It's the technical areas that offer many opportunities. Unfortunately, we haven't trained our people enough. And so there may be opportunity, but there are no people to take up those opportunities because of lack of skills, because of lack of conscious effort to train the people.
After 10 years, that is a sad...
yes, it's a sad revelation. And then when it comes to the spend, value of contracts awarded to local firms, $1.2 billion US out of a total spend of $16 billion.
Goodness me.
So really, we haven't achieved much.
So the bulk of the money is still going to foreign accounts.
Yes.
I mean, foreigners are benefiting far more than Ghanaians.
That is a sad development. And so before the MPP came to office, the party and its experts analyzed the local content space and made 3 observations. identified three main challenges. Number one, we realized that the jobs and projects are normal at the development stage. Unfortunately, in developing all the three producing fields, we were not ready. We didn't train our people to take advantage of the many jobs and projects that take place during the development stage. That was one. Number two, value addition did not feature prominently in our scheme of things as a country. And if you have to develop your people to add value to what you are extracting, then the bulk of the resources extracted will remain in the country. That didn't feature much. Number three, the petroleum agreements that are now producing oil, that have led to oil production today, were signed before the local content law was passed. And so enforcement has been difficult because these petroleum agreements have stability provisions. And you will see the companies contesting every day that this law wasn't there when our petroleum agreement was signed. And so why will you force it on us? You know, these were the challenges. And so to be able to address these challenges, we promised in our manifesto that we were going to establish the Accelerated Oil and Gas Capacity Program. So that the lost opportunity, the opportunity we lost from the development of the three producing fields, we will be able to accelerate our efforts to catch up. So what we're trying to do is catching up. The second, we promised in our manifesto to promote and increase local fabrications, installations and construction along the oil and gas value chain so that we can add value. And truly, by the end of 2018, His Excellency the President launched the Accelerated Oil and Gas Capacity Program. And a number of Ghanaians, students, young people have been taken abroad for training. Also teachers from the Kikam Technical Institute and the Takoradi Technical Institute, about 6 of them have been taken for advanced training so that they can come and train our people to enable us, provide the skills that will allow us accelerate our participation. Apart from this, 7 technical institutes have been retooled with equipment to train people in oil and gas. And some of them have started, for example, the regional maritime has started providing services to oil companies, service companies in Ghana. But this is not all. What I think we needed to do, the value addition component of it, we were to start that with the ACA project. Because that is the first development project we are looking forward to. And so of the total 18,000 tons of fabrications required for the topside models, we negotiated to do 5,000 tons of that.
That will be done by Ghanaians?
By Ghanaians. This will require more fabrication facilities. This will require more people trained, given the necessary skills to be able to do welding, advanced welding, electricals, mechanics, instrumentation, etc., etc. About 100 young Ghanaians are also being trained at both Takoradi Technical Institute and Kikam. And these are the first crop of Ghanaians being trained in Ghana under the AOGC. And these people will come and help us accelerate our participation. But apart from this, His Excellency the President took advantage of a request by some of the companies to renegotiate aspects of their contracts to increase local participation. And here I'm talking about interest held by Ghanaians in the firms, particularly in petroleum agreements that were signed before the local content law was passed, which then required a minimum of 5%, of the interest held by indigenous Ghanaian firms. I'm talking about the AGM contract. We managed to negotiate the local participation from 2.5% to 5%. And so we have increased Ghanaian participation in a petroleum agreement that was signed before the local content law came into force. This is not all. Aker Energy, we've also negotiated with them while negotiating on their plan of development to select 10 Ghanaian firms, 10 indigenous firms, to train them from where they are at very rudimentary stages to become tier 1 contractors. contractors that can compete with foreign companies. We've also done a lot of trade missions. About 207 local firms have been taken on trade missions abroad, to Aberdeen, to Norway, to Houston, to develop partnership with experienced companies so that they can gain the training and the capacity to be competitive, so they can compete for contracts in Ghana. So these are the things we have been doing under the Accelerated Oil and Gas Capacity Program.
Let's talk about, in terms of senior management though, of the multinationals. Yeah. So there's a lot of focus on getting as many Ghanaians in, but then there's also the quality of the sort of leadership role that Ghanaians are holding. Recently, I mean, something that had come up for some concern from some people. They watch what happened at Talo, for example, where we all know a Ghanaian was a country manager, Mr. Watchy, and then he retires. And many expected that that tradition at least will continue, will put somebody at the top, and then a foreigner was been brought in. Some look at that and say maybe that is symptomatic of a bigger problem with multinationals at that level when it comes to senior management roles. Foreigners are still being favored over Ghanaian. What's your take on that? I
mean, I have to tell you that of the 5,000 Ghanaians that were recruited in 2019 to work in the industry, 600 of them were in management positions. Some senior management, others middle level management, 600. That's quite decent to start with. Specific to Mr. Awotri, he is a distinguished technocrat and leader. And I know that both Ghana and Talo have not regretted his leadership. Similar to the Ghanaians we have at Cosmos Energy and other companies. The latest Ghanaian to be appointed to head a foreign company is Miss Khadija Amua, Aker Energy country director. And so, as Mr. Awotri is leaving, another Ghanaian has assumed a bigger role in another company. But let me say that we only have been informed so far about Mr. Awotri's exit. But as to who will replace him, the company will usually come and discuss with government. And we haven't received any delegation to discuss that yet. And so if you're already talking about a foreigner having replaced him, that is not known to us because officially we haven't discussed the replacement with the company. Yes, this is not official because we don't know about that. And we will insist that we have discussions on that to ensure that Ghana benefits.
So what the company has already communicated publicly, as far as government is concerned, cannot be the official.
It's not official.
Until it's discussed with government?
Yes, yes, and that is usually the practice.
But don't they have the final say on this matter as a company?
Don't they have?
The final say as a company?
No, of course. I mean, we are partners. We are working together. Apart from the fact that Ghana has, a stake in the bloc through GNPC, this is the country where the activity is taking place. And government gives approvals, and permits for any company working in the oil industry. So we are a very important stakeholder. We are the host nation. And so you can't just move in people without discussing with officials of the government.
I get the sense that
not done.
It's government's wish in further, I guess, entrenchment of your local content ambitions, that you rather prefer that position is still held by Ghanaian.
I mean, companies have their policies. There's no doubt about that. And decisions are made in their boards. We are not sitting, on their boards. And so when they make decisions, yes, they make decisions looking at their objective, their goal, their profit-mindedness, how to ensure that they achieve the objective of the company. So government will usually not impose. But as partners, we always discuss these issues. The government will put up its proposals, they will bring their proposals, we will discuss, and then we come out with a position that is mutually beneficial. And so as you said, our preference is for a Ghanaian to be appointed. If they have already appointed a foreigner, that's not official to us because we haven't had any discussions to that effect. And so we're looking forward to discussing it, and a decision that will benefit Ghana will be taken.
I know when it comes to getting a partner for ECG, government is so committed to the constitutional arrangement. PDS is out of the way. What's the update in getting a replacement for PDS?
Well, I mean, government is looking at a number of options. I mean, I think that we are still committed to private sector participation, and so a number of options are being discussed. I'm unable to disclose those options. What we are focusing our attention on today is to build a stronger ECG, so that in the end, whatever decision is made in terms of private sector participation, the asking price for Ghana is going to be high. We would have maximized, the value of the company if we put in effort to build it to become stronger and efficient. For example, you know that government has cleared the government debt to ECG, and there is even a surplus that will be used to pay bills in future. Apart from that, the recent relief, granted by His Excellency the President to all Ghanaians, free electricity for lifeline consumers, 50% reduction in bills for all other consumers, have been paid for by government already. In the past, it would have been left on the books of ECG. It would have added to its debt.
ECG last week confirmed that they have the surplus.
Yes, government has already paid them. And so we are focusing on developing a stronger ECG and addressing the challenges that they faced, so that if in the event that a final decision on a private sector partner, ECG's value will be higher, and Ghana will stand to benefit from that.
But you raised a very important. I mean, if ECG now is in a healthier financial position, yes. I mean, why don't you let ECG continue as it is? Because now they're proving that they can do the job with government support. So
I mean, that is why I told you the government is considering so many options. Maybe if I disclose those options, that would have answered your question. But let's allow the process to continue. At the right time, government will announce its position.
Let's finish with the politics of it, right? I'm sure you heard recently, Dr. Baumia has been embroiled in this tussle with the opposition party when it comes to records. The president also, John Dramani Mahama, claims that when it comes to the energy sector, they've done better than you've done. Where do you stand on that debate?
That's very interesting. I mean, certainly where I stand, and any objective-minded person who has the benefit of seeing the data, will attest to the fact that when it comes to the oil and gas industry, President Akufo-Addo stands out relative to John Mahama.
In what specific sense?
And I'll tell you why. In terms of infrastructure, President Mahama completed the Atwab gas processing plant in 2014, but this was a project started by President Mills in 2011-2012. That was completed, all right. What was problematic about it, what I call the failure of planning, was for the government then to have realized that we have most of our power plants in Tema. That is the eastern part of Ghana. But there was no project to link the processing plant through a pipeline to where our plants are. And so even at the time we had Dumso, because Nigeria had curtailed, supply of gas to us, we had so much of our own gas, our indigenous gas, stranded in Takoradi. This was the failure of planning. Today, as I speak to you, President Akufo-Addo has delivered the first phase of the gas reverse project, which now allows us to flow up to 60 million standard cubic feet of gas a day from Takoradi to Tema.
NDC says they started the process to do the reverse flow, but they secured the funding before they left. They were in Parliament before 2016 to present a plan for that to happen. You simply executed the plan and they left.
They didn't secure any funding. Funding from where? How much did they spend? Where did they get that money? It took us to amend the plan of development on the OCTP project and to request that savings made from the project be used to deliver on that project. So the NDC didn't secure funding from anywhere.
But you acknowledge they had a plan to do this before.
In fact, the plan to do that did not even come from the NDC. It came from the World Bank. The World Bank submitted an aid memoir to the government at that time, recommending that Ghana should do a reverse flow project through the West Africa gas pipeline to allow us to flow gas from Takoradi to Tema so we could address the fuel supply challenges facing our energy sector. The government did not act. Perhaps they didn't have the ideas how to find the money. And that is why I said that they never secured any money.
But if the World Bank was proposing, the World Bank would have given money.
No,
for
it's
that.
not all the time the World Bank, give you money. They also give policy support. And that was a policy support to the government. It took President Akufo-Addo to amend the plan of development over the OCTP project and to request that part of the savings from that project be used to do that project. And that is what we have done. And so we are now able to flow gas from Takoradi to Tema. So if Nigeria gas is not coming as required, then of course we have our own indigenous gas, which in the past was stranded, wasting. And even though it was wasting, we're paying for it. I'm sure you know that, because of the take or pay provisions in the contract. And so as far as infrastructure, President Akufo-Addo has done well. But President Akufo-Addo also took a strategic view of the mobile nature of the car power ship plant. The NDC brought that plant, but the NDC located it in Tema. It took President Akufo-Addo to give a strategic view to the use of that plant. If the plant is mobile, why don't we move it to Takoradi, convert it to gas, to use gas, and then to be able to use that, to use the gas that is stranded in Takoradi. Because if you're able to flow 60 million scf, you still have up to 180 million scf stranded. And so we have relocated the car power ship to Takoradi, converted it to use gas, and it's now consuming 90 million standard cubic feet of gas. Gas which was in surplus, which was stranded, we're paying for it, now we are using it. That is on the infrastructure side. When it comes to the real devil, they say the devil is in the details. The real devil of the oil and gas industry is how to look for the oil and find the oil. I'm talking about drilling.
They say Sankofa was their
and
ENI was their baby. I mean, what do you have to show for it?
You see, when you sign a contract, that doesn't end it. It's for the company to deliver on its work program. It's for the government to ensure that the company works. They do drilling. They find the oil. President Mahama signed 13 petroleum agreements between 2013 and 2016. And within that period, the companies involved were supposed to drill 14 wells and to spend $890 million US. As of the end of 2016, not a single well was drilled. And of the $890 million US they were to spend, they spent only 95 million, about 10% of what they were supposed to spend. Not a single well was drilled. And so no discoveries were made. It took President Akufo-Addo's government to push the companies to deliver on their work program.
How many wells have you drilled?
And so the drills that were done, the drilling works that were done by Aker Energy, which they didn't sign a contract for, it was signed by President Akufo. ENI Block 4 drilled, Springfield drilled, AGM drilled. And in the case of AGM, we had to promote a change in ownership by a more credible, resourceful partner, as a result of which they were able to drill. And so we pushed the companies to drill. The companies they signed the contract, they couldn't push them to drill over the period 2013-2016, even though they were supposed to drill 14 wells.
What about
and because of the drilling they did, they made discoveries.
What about Sankofa?
Sankofa was discovered some time ago under President Mills. It wasn't under, President Mahama. And so President Akufo-Addo ensured that the companies drilled and made discoveries. In 2019, we made 4 discoveries. That is the difference. And so, in terms of who is growing our industry, at some point in time, we had 4 oil rigs working in our waters. Unprecedented. And that was 2019. Unprecedented in the history of Ghana.
But they also had ENI. They had the Italian PM come to Ghana, went to Parliament, was to John Mahama. That was a significant time in our oil and gas history.
I am talking about companies that were engaged by the government of Ghana which were supposed to execute projects.
But ENI is executing.
But when did they execute it? That's what I'm saying. That it took our government to tell every company that held contracts to do their work.
Well, some may dispute
or they are
that.
penalized, or the contracts are abrogated. And I'm sure you know
Yeah, I mean,
that some contracts
have been abrogated.
Yes.
Yeah. Or you're in consultations
Yes.
to do that.
Yes.
I mean, but if you talk about ENI, for example, you know, every exploration has a period. So you might sign a contract, but it takes time. It just so may happen that as the time elapsed, 2016, they lost elections, you came into power, and so but it's not something because you could take credit for.
It took the company to just bring in an oil rig once and did the drilling, and they found the oil. So you are saying that within the period of 2013 to 2016, even though their exploration period had not expired, what were they doing? And so the conditions, the environment determines the decisions a company will make in drilling or not. If they are not incentivized, and I tell you, Springfield, for example, we have to support them. They had challenges because the petroleum agreement that they signed required them to make certain payments to GNPC and then to Petroleum Commission. We had to give them extension of about 2 years not to pay, so that they could invest that money in the work they were doing. That was one. Many people say that the NDC is promoting Ghanaianization of the oil industry because of the Springfield contract. But in that contract, they required Springfield to appoint a foreign partner within 1 year. It took us, our government, to give them an extension, 2 years, because we believe that the Ghanaian could do it. Because the capacity is where? The capacity is out there in the market. Go and buy. And they did that because of the support we gave them, and they made a discovery without a foreign partner. So between NDC and NPP, who promotes Ghanaianization of the oil and gas industry? The one that requires a Ghanaian company to appoint a foreign partner in 1 year, or the one that has given them extension by 2 years, and to ask them to do it on their own, and to ask them not to pay certain payments they were supposed to make.
Recognized their potential and first gave them the petroleum agreement.
Recognizing one's potential is different from supporting that person to realize the potential.
The bulk of the work is a petroleum agreement.
No, if it is petroleum agreement,
which they backed through Parliament.
No, if it is
in 2016.
If it is petroleum agreements, how about the foreign company they signed the petroleum agreements with? Couldn't they have signed those contracts with Ghanaians? So it is not the petroleum agreement. The petroleum agreement in itself, that cannot lead to production, is nonsense.
But Springfield got the support of the John Mahama administration.
And so they signed a contract with them, but we supported the company. And I've just told you the intervention that we made to allow them to do the drilling. That is the difference. And so between John Mahama and President Akufo-Addo, 3.5 years, a lot has taken place in the oil and gas industry. We are faced with some challenges. The oil industry itself is challenged by the fact that renewable energy is competing. Electric vehicles are coming up strongly, climate change, and therefore oil is losing its value. It is the strategy by every country to find the oil as quickly as they can and to deplete it as quickly as they can. We cannot be an island. And so the focus of our president going forward has been how to find more oil and how to deplete as much as we can so that we can derive the value before oil loses its value. And so what our president has done recently is to seek amendments to some of our regulations. And we have achieved those amendments to allow companies to do exploration in producing areas without having to sign a new petroleum agreement. Under the old regime, you needed to sign a petroleum agreement. If you were producing an area and you wanted to just do further exploration, you needed to sign a petroleum agreement. And that put off companies. And so you have resources that are stranded. because companies are not incentivized to go and look for more oil. And so because of that, Tullow Oil and the Jubilee partners, they are going after what we call near-field opportunities to recover up to 100 million barrels of oil, which would have been wasted, would have been stranded if we didn't make these amendments. Another amendment that we have achieved, seeking to increase the size of the production and development area. So companies that are ambitious and that have maturation programs can be allowed to find more oil from areas that they would have relinquished. And when they relinquish some of those areas, they are usually so small that they cannot be configured to form another block. And so resources beneath those areas will go wasted. And so by the amendment to allow for increase in the size of the production and development area, we now are making more space available for companies that are ambitious to look for more oil. We also have done the first bidding round to allocate more oil blocks to Ghanaians and their foreign partners so that they can look for more oil. We have been able to bring in ExxonMobil, and we are currently discussing with 3 other global giants that have expressed interest in coming to Ghana.
Who are these?
CNOOC is one. We've discussed with BP. We're discussing with Chevron that wants to
These are super
partner.
majors.
Yes, these are super majors. Because we want to be able to attract the best of the best. So we can find the oil as much as we can deplete as much as we can drive the value and develop our country with the revenue that we generate, but we can also add value. Because at the end of it all, you don't just need to be a rent collector. You must use the oil to transform your economy and your people. And that is what our president is committed to.
Well, as they say, on December 7th, the ultimate verdict will be delivered on who has done the best. But I guess you've made your best pitch to the people, both for your constituency and for the president, who will be running in your constituency on your back come December 7th. Thank you very much for joining us on PM Express. My name is Evans Mensah. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
My pleasure.